folks, so welcome to another episode of Natalie's Sofa. Hopefully we'll be on time today, or it'll be quite late when I release this because it's Wednesday as I'm recording this. And the other week I talked about flash technique and how we can use front and rear curtain flash to get different effects. Now, I was playing around with some flash, a manual flash actually, on my Lumix cameras. And I just wanted to first of all start off because I'm going to show you a new flash trigger that's probably the best flash trigger you've ever seen. So keep watching. We're talking about the Godox X3. But let me digress slightly first. I managed to do these much better examples than I got last week of front and rear curtain flash. And you can see when we bring up front curtain flash, the flash fires first and then you get like a trail of the item you've photographed. And when you get rear curtain flash, you kind of get the trail first and then the item at the end of the trail. It's really subtle, but rear curtain flash tends to be better for freezing subjects but leaving an effect of a trail, whereas front curtain flash just creates some quite wacky effects. As you can see, the trails all over the subject that I use. I just use my crash helmet there as a test subject because it's got colours in it and you could see the trails. And it was better than what I tried to use as an example of the leaves. But I digress. It's I'm enjoying using flash, but I had one of these, which is a Godox X3, and it eats batteries, and it's got fiddly wheels and dials and buttons and a convoluted menu system, and it's a right pain in the backside to use. Once you've got it set up, it does work, but the batteries don't last very long. If you use rechargeables, you never know what charge you got left because rechargeable batteries never show the battery indicator properly, and the same applies to flashes themselves, which are battery powered. So, and I was thinking, well, I want something that works with both cameras, and I was resigned to the fact that I would have to buy two triggers, a Lumix trigger and a Fuji trigger, because if you want TTL flash, which is a kind of, for want of a better word, a semi-automatic flash mode where you can use exposure compensation for the flash to underexpose or overexpose the flash, so it's quite handy for run and gun stuff. And in order to have that, you'd have to have a Lumix flash and a Fuji flash to get TTL. Manual's fine, you can get dumb triggers, but if you want TTL, you have to get the flash specific. But I can work with manual flash. So I got, and I'll show you some close-ups of this while I'm talking about it, I got the little Godox. The little Godox X3, and it's tiny. You can see it in comparison to my hand, and you can see it in comparison to a standard flash commander. And not only that, of course it comes in a lovely little case, is its touchscreen, as you can see again from the video. I'm bringing it up here, I've got some close-ups of it. It's touchscreen. You can also use a little command dial on the side of it to wheel the menus up and down. And you can add groups just like you can on a standard commander. It's just there visible. You can scroll with your finger up and down and choose things, and you can change things at a glance. And it's very easy to manipulate settings and see them. So one of the things as you get older is your eyesight tends to be not as good with low contrast things. So the screens on these commanders tend to be a bit dim. They're not easy to see, especially when the light goes out. But the screen on these, as you can see from the pictures, the screen on that X3 is really, really clear, and it's really easy to use. And its bonuses, its advantages are as it's lithium. It's got a lithium-ion battery built in that lasts hours, and hours. So you're not fiddling around. That's why it's so small as well. You're not fiddling around with batteries. You've just got a unit that you put on top of your camera, and it works. And indeed, it works really well with standard, like manual flashes as well. So I've got a Godox X3, which is a completely manual dumb flash, which I can use on my Lumix cameras, and it controls that. And I can switch to Group B or Group A, and switch between the different flashes, or to change their settings easily, and then I can fire them because I've got them both set on channel 10. My other flash is called a Godox TT350. I'm hoping to pick up a V862 in the next day or so, and I'll talk about that in a later video, but it's a much more advanced flash for the modelling work I've been doing. And I'm keen to learn more. I've always shied away, as I said in the last video, from flash. So, that said, are there any caveats? Well, yes, in TTL mode, if you change the exposure compensation on the unit, it will disconnect and reconnect every time you change the setting. It's not a problem, but it's a bit disconcerting. And also, when you do change the exposure compensation on the flash, it's not reflected on the TTL screen. I don't know if they could do that or not, and apparently when I read about it, it's kind of the way that the TTL mode on Fuji cameras works. You have to leave it in TTL mode on the camera to move to adjust the flash in manual, but you just pop the flash to manual mode on the commander. Essentially, the easiest way to work this is to change it on the commander, which has got a really clear screen this time. Now you can see precisely what you're doing on this beautifully clear screen. Now, the only things you have to change on the camera are flash, front curtain or rear curtain, pretty much. But there is another mode that this has, and I'm just going to open it to remind myself what the mode is. You can see you can power it on. Just got a little button on the side. You probably can't hardly see that. See the little Godox logo come up. I have it upside down. And I'm just going to swipe down and get the menu up. And we've got this thing called Legacy Hot Shoe Mode. And you might be asking, well, what's Legacy Hot Shoe Mode? Well, if you remember, at the start of the video, I told you that generally if you want TTL flash and a TTL flash commander, you have to buy a proprietary one. But I didn't know this when I bought the X3 because it wasn't advertised in the documentation. It was very vaguely referenced that the X3 could work with any camera, but it wasn't very specific. And then when I first got it out of the box, I was like, oh, what's this mode? I switched it on and I read about it. And I thought, and it said, this mode switches the flash commander into dumb trigger mode. That means like a 1-pin flash. And a lot of generic flash triggers where you don't have TTL are just dumb triggers. And I thought, oh, well, I don't have remote flash capability on my Lumix cameras, which limits what I can do with model shooting if I'm not using a fill flash. And I'll go in a little bit more detail of why I use a flash, or as I'm learning to use it for model shoots in a moment. So I popped the X3 on my S5 II, set it in dumb mode, had a play around, and yeah, it works in manual. I can change the settings on the commander to adjust the flash power. There's obviously no TTL. And I can put front or rear curtain sync, which is pretty good when you consider that, this commander, the X2T, as far as I understand, doesn't have a dumb mode. Or if it does, I couldn't find it. I was too dumb to find it. No pun intended. And that was a bit of a game changer for me. So I've got this tiny little unit that is lithium-ion battery powered, which I run all day for photo shoot. You're not faffing around, because when I did my first shoot, I was faffing around with batteries, the flash ran out, and you might get yourself into a tricky position to take a picture of a model. Like, you know, we did waterfall shoots, and you go, oh, and the batteries run out, and there was like, my bag's over there, and it would take me 10-15 minutes to get to it, and then the light changes. And so having something like this is a game changer. And the flash I'm picking up, hopefully on Friday, that is lithium-ion battery as well, and will do 600 full power shots on one battery. I'm picking up a used one, but my understanding is that it's never been used before, so it's as new, but it's obviously discounted because it's used. And the reason that I'm learning with flash is that even in good natural light, you will get subtle shadows on the face. Now, sometimes if you're doing Rembrandt style pictures where you want a strong shadow on one side of the face and a weaker shadow on the other side of the face, that can be desirable. In monochrome photography, you may want to reduce the power or not use a flash at all, because you might want to have lovely contrasty shadows. As I say, Rembrandt is, and I'll bring up is an example of a sort of Rembrandt style picture, is a style all in itself where you've gone for the contrast. You might have half of a face almost in total shadow and another half well lit. You may still use lighting and you may still use a flash, but you can more easily do it with natural lighting, because natural lighting causes shadows. That's the reason why, as I've talked about these lights before that I've got on, I have these lights on, because there's enough light in this room to film, but you get shadows and things, and these lights just kind of subtly remove the shadows. I'm using a new light over there. It's actually a camping light, but it turned out to be really good as a studio light. It's battery powered, but I've got it on quite a warm setting to see if it makes any difference. Comment below if you can see a subtle difference between this video and the last one in the lighting. But I digress. So that's really why you're using flash, to get a little bit of control over not illuminating the full subject, but illuminating the shadows so you get more even lighting around the model, and it makes them pop from the background, not just that you're separating the background. And flash lets you shoot at lower shutter speeds in order to get different looks. As the example you saw when I did my last video, the waterfall was looked like it was blurry, and that's not just because of the shallow depth of field. That's because the photograph was taken at 1/30th of a second, but the flash sync caused the image to be frozen, because the flash freezes the image. That's why you use rear curtain sync to photograph a model. So I really just wanted to sort of bring that to your attention, that I got this little X3, and do a little mini sort of review of my first impressions of the Godox X3. And first impressions are, I think it's a game changer. I don't know why more flash commanders aren't like this, and it's £80 to buy. I mean, 80 quid. When you think that the clunky ones are £50-60 for an X2, and this little commander is £80. You know, in the long run, I might well get one for my Lumix camera, so I can do TTL. But at the moment, I'm over the moon that I can just remotely fire a flash and do it manually. A lot of people do manual flash only. And now on to one other final little thing. And you remember that we talked about a Pentax camera that was coming out, and they've actually released it now. There's pictures. I can show you an actual picture of what it looks like. And it's kind of like it's a film camera, and it's a half-frame film camera. Remember we talked about in the previous year about half-frame, and it's imminently coming out from Pentax. I think it's called the 17, if I remember correctly. I will bring the camera picture up on the screen now, and its actual name. And I would be intrigued by it. It's a fixed lens, fixed focal length camera, pancake lens. From what I've read, I don't think it's interchangeable. It's designed to be a fun camera. And I think it certainly would be an intriguing camera to use. And Fuji, with their Instax, have really sort of cornered the fun end of the camera market, because the Instax are fun. They're cheap. They're around about £100 to £150. You buy a set of film for it, put it in, you get instant images. This is an old school film camera. I love the fact that it's half frame, but it's £500. And I'm like, I could buy a vintage half frame camera that I'd kind of prefer over this new camera. I don't know. What do you think? Would you pay? I've got a film camera. I'm going to stretch over here. I've got a film camera as I stretch over to my props table. This is a Fuji ST705W and cost me £30, and it came with a lens for £30 and a case and a strap. And I've used it. It's a nice camera, and it gives me that nostalgic film feel. It's got interchangeable lenses, and you can get an Industar 50mm f3.5 pancake lens for it, because it's an M42 thread. And I thought, well, unless you want that specific camera, wouldn't you have thought that a retro camera should have a retro price? Maybe £199 or something? Because there's not a lot to a film camera. They're just mostly mechanical. And while there's manufacturing costs, again, it's not an interchangeable lens. There's nothing fancy on the camera. I don't know. I would love to know what you guys think of it, of this camera. You've seen the picture of it. Any of you film fans, would you buy it? Or would you rather go to a car boot fair and find something like this? To use as a film camera, as a bit of fun. I think the jury's out for me. I'm not sure. I think £500 is a lot of money. And I think if I was going to spend that much, I'd be looking at getting a pen camera, either one of the original half-frame film pen cameras or a digital pen camera, which I could get for a little bit more money. And the final thing, which is kind of loosely unrelated, but I thought I'd tag it on the end. If you're still watching, thank you. I'm going to try and keep the schedule up for these, but I'm not going to go into the details, but I may have to, I rent my property and I may have to suddenly move house. I don't know. So there might be things that knock the schedule, and the videos may occasionally become a bit more erratic, because I might have to do something such as get a valuation or have a mortgage interview or something like that. So the next few months are going to be hectic. So I know the schedule's been slipping, but I've had a lot going on the last week or so. So that's kind of partly the reason. Also, I've been away on holiday, which always throws a spanner in the works. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think of the Panasonic. Let me know what you think about the X3 flash trigger. I really think the X3 is a game changer. And I think for the money, if you're looking for a flash trigger, you couldn't do better than that, especially if you have two camera systems. Get TTL for your favourite system, and then you've got a dumb trigger for your backup system. And you're sorted. It comes in all different flavours. You can get it for Olympus, Panasonic. You can get it for Fuji, Sony, Canon and Nikon. It's available for all popular camera makes for TTL. And of course, if you just want a dumb flash, it doesn't really matter what version you get. because it will work as a dumb flash trigger and still give you that wonderful, easy to read display. That's the biggest thing for me, the display. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed this little episode, and I will catch you all next week for the next one. See you all later, folks. Bye.